Okay, today I'm going over the basic procedure for doing a Greek word study in BibleWorks. You should plan to move through each of these steps sequentially and answer the questions within each step. Your final product will be structured in a paragraph format, and so do not simply list answers to the questions. And I'll show you what that paragraph format will look like at the end. So the first step for a basic word study is to find all verses where the word occurs. You're going to search the BGM for the occurrences of the Greek word. Now, let me just remind you that BGM stands for BibleWorks Greek Morphology, and that allows you to search all forms of a word. Okay, BGT is the Septuagint plus the Greek New Testament text. So if you have the BGM up, it looks like this, and what you're seeing is the word, the lemma. The lemma is what's the lemma. You need to know that technical term. It stands for the lexical or dictionary form of a word. So if you're looking up on in the dictionary, you look it up like this. If you want to, so we're looking at Exodus. Here's the form you see in the text, noris zeta, but in the BGM, you see norizo, because noriseta is the future form, norizo is the form that's in the dictionary. Okay, and then the parsing follows that, and the easiest way for you all to look up a word is to go to the Greek text. So let's say that we're in Matthew 3, Matthew chapter 3, verse 5. Doesn't matter what verse I'm in. And let's say I want to do a word study on perichoros. If I right-click, I can choose Search on Lemma. Search on Lemma will find all the instances of that word. Now, if you notice down here at the bottom, I already have the limits set to the New Testament. If I hadn't had those limits set to the New Testament, and I right-clicked on perichoros, I would have gotten 31 hits, all the times it occurs in the Old Testament, as well as the Apocrypha. Please remember that the Septuagint includes the Apocrypha, and it lists the apocryphal books between the canonical Old Testament books and the New Testament books. So, for example, right here in this list, JUT stands for Judith 3:7, and the book of Judith is going to be listed there. Okay, you don't have to eliminate apocryphal literature when you're doing Greek word studies, because what you're studying is what a word means in Greek. It doesn't really matter what book you're looking at. Greek is Greek. Okay, provided that we're still in the Q&A period. Okay, but I do want you to limit your study to the New Testament to begin with. If you want to include the Septuagint data, you may do so, but do that after you've focused first on the New Testament. Although the Septuagint is Q&A Greek, you should remember that it's a translation of Hebrew and will reflect that influence. The Septuagint's word usage may have directly influenced the New Testament, and there are clear places where that's the case, but you can't assume that it does. Okay, you have to demonstrate. So just as an example, the word eleos in the song Holy, Holy, Holy that we sing eleemon ke iskuros. Eleemon is merciful. Eleos, mercy. In Greek, it means to show kindness to someone less fortunate. But eleos was used to translate chesed, and chesed in Hebrew has nothing to do with showing mercy to someone less favorable. It has to do with kindness, sometimes loving kindness, sometimes loyal loving kindness, and often in the context of a covenant relationship. So when you see in the Gospels Mary or Elizabeth talking about the eleos of God, they're not talking about the Greek concept of mercy, they're talking about the Hebrew concept of chesed. Okay? So here's the questions you're going to answer. In how many New Testament verses does the word occur? Okay, so let's go back to BibleWorks and L space NT limits things to the New Testament, and we'll right click on the word. Oops. Choose search on lemma, and down here at the bottom, please pay attention that the number of verses that a word occurs in may be different than the number of hits. In this case, there was only one instance per verse. But it could be that the word occurs multiple times in a verse, and so you're looking at the number of hits, not the number of verses. Okay? How many times does the word... and A was in how many verses does the word occur? B, how many times does the word occur? C, list the verse references in which the word occurs. Okay? Now, you do that by right-clicking on the verse list and copy verse list, no text. But before you choose that option, you should see how that's set up to look. It's currently set up to look like this, which is the way it's supposed to. Merge consecutive references and remove frequency data from the list. So that's what you want. Once you click that, you can right-click, choose Copy Verse List, no text, come over to Word, and drop the verse list. I'm having problems with my copy function in Word right now, so it's not, I can't count on it to work. I'm not sure why. That'll drop, that verse list will drop in. If you want extra credit for 5 points, find the information requested in A through C for the Septuagint. Okay, then study the word in each verse. After finding all occurrences of the word, switch from the BGM to the New American Standard. Export the search window verse list to your word processor, exporting only the NASB, and then determine from the analysis window all the English words or phrases the NASB used to translate the word you're studying. Search and replace each of those words or phrases with the Greek or with the transliteration of the Greek word. This will guard you from being influenced by the English translation. Once you've done this, read through each passage in the NASB, determining what you think is the proper meaning of the Greek word. Alright, so that looks like I've already done this for you in basic procedure for a Greek word study plus proskartereo. So here's all the places where this verb occurs. I've taken the NASB text and I've replaced it with an English transliteration of the Greek. So he told his disciples that a boat should proskartere for him because of the crowd. These all with one mind were proskarteruntes themselves to prayer. They were proskarteruntes themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship. Day by day proskarteruntes themselves with one mind. Okay? And what that does is that eliminates your tendency, all of our tendency, to depend on the English. And we're saying, okay, here's this word, whatever proskarteruntes means, and I can see who was doing it, what they were doing it to, and get my best guess as to what's going on with this word. I've never seen it before. What's it mean? Okay. So Simon was proskarteron with Philip, a devout soldier who proskarterundon on him. They're supposed to proskarteruntes to prayer. These rulers are servants of God. Proskarteruntes themselves to this very thing. Proskarterete yourselves to prayer. Okay. So you're going to attempt to infer from the context the meaning of the word. As you do that, number 3, identify and group passages that have similar word meanings. Summarize the particular usage and list the relevant passages after the summarized meaning. Your summary of meanings will be similar to a lexical entry. So, for example, the verb agapao means to commit to seek another's good in the following verses. So I've worked with agapao, and I say, well, I guess it means something like commit to seek someone's good in these verses, and I list those verses. And then it means over here to have affection for. And it means that in these places. And it means to choose to set one's affection upon in these places. So, like, love not the world. To choose to set one's affection upon. So steps 1 to 3, what that does is that has you doing an inductive word study where you're looking at all the occurrences, doing your best to figure them out, summarize the uses, list the references. Then, after you've done that, you can consult the standard lexicons. Okay? You have to consult the ones that I list here, Freiburg, Louw-Nida, and BDAG. There are paper copies of BDAG in the Shmuel Center and in the main library. And I even sometimes put BDAG information on Google Drive so that you can look at it there. But if I don't put it on Google Drive, you do have to look it up in the paper. Then you study the word meaning in a theological or Bible dictionary. So you can consult the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, TD&T, or the New International Dictionary of the New Testament Theology. You will have to look those up. Those are paper. You're going to have to go look. Now, this is the result. Here's what the result's going to look like. It'll have 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1 will say, the word such and such occurs X times in the New Testament, and if you choose to include the Septuagint, X times in the Septuagint. The King James translates it with A so many times, B so many times, and so on. The NASB translates it with A so many times, B so many times, and so on. Okay? This word has the following senses. Here you will drop in the senses that you derived. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Then after you've dropped in your senses, you will say, sense 1 is illustrated in X references, and you will X reference, singular, Then you will quote the verse that you think best illustrates sense 1. Then you'll say other verses that illustrate this sense include, and you'll give the other references. Sense 2 is illustrated in Y reference, other verses that illustrate include, so on. Okay, that's the first paragraph. The second paragraph is you list the senses you found in the lexicons and the theological dictionaries. Paragraph 3, you're going to discuss any passage of Scripture where your word study gives you a new or clearer understanding of its meaning. Okay. So, I'm having you study words that are related to the doctrine of holiness and or prayer. And so I'm not choosing these words because they don't give you any clearer understanding. There ought to be a clearer understanding having studied them. Okay. So that's the basic method that you'll use. Now let me come back up and talk about how you find the King James translating and the NASB translating something A, B, and C. Okay. Over here on the right side, you have multiple tabs, one of which is called the analysis window. In the analysis window, if you run your cursor over the Greek, you get the definitions of the Greek based on whatever lexicons you have in your Bible works. When you run your cursor over the New American Standard, you get the Strong's number that word is tagged with, along with Strong's definition, which we don't really care. But you also get a usage stat there. Okay? And the usage of Jerusalem is Jerusalem, 63 times. That's the only thing Jerusalem ever means. It's Jerusalem. All right. Let's get a little more helpful example. Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it's impossible to please Him. We'll put our cursor over the word faith. Okay, so in the NASB, they say that the word pistis, which means faith 238 times. Faithfulness, doesn't mean faith, is translated faith 238 times. Translated faithfulness 3 times. Pledge once, and proof once. So your sentence would say the NASB translates pistis, faith 238 times. Faithfulness 3 times, pledge 1 time, proof 1 time. Now, you may copy and paste that out of there. Don't leave no space between the parenthesis and the last letter of the word. Okay. Format it properly. It ought to say 238x, standing for times. Students in the past typically count how many times a word occurs by hand. It's like going back to the Middle Ages. You don't need to count. It's already been counted for you. Okay. So King James and the New American Standard both have Strong's numbers tags, and so you get that usage information for both of them. Other versions, the NIV, ESV, do not have that information, so you would have to count it by hand. Okay? I just ask for what you don't have to count by hand. Faith, assurance, belief, them that believe, fidelity. Okay. Let me pause there and see if you have any questions about anything I've said so far.